Welcome! In this video, we're going to talk about our common heritages and our ancestries, and as well as providing our viewers with very interesting information about the origin of the race of Homo sapiens. Sit back, relax, and we hope you enjoy this video. It all began in Africa about 200,000 years ago in approximately what is now Ethiopia. The first specimens of the Homo sapiens species have just arrived.
Due to the growing population and climate changes, many of the Homo sapiens were forced to migrate, although some still stayed in that area. A few groups migrated to the Levant, while most of them settled down in other places in Africa. Then came one of the worst events of the last ice age. The population of Homo sapiens dropped until there were no more than 10,000 specimens, and those who went to the Levant went extinct. It wasn't before about 80,000 till 70,000 BC that the Homo sapiens managed to fully settle in that area.
Scientists think that a group of around 200 Homo sapiens tried to cross the Red Sea, but only one female and one male managed to survive the trip. This would be the ancestor and ancestress of all people outside Africa.
But the area that they have arrived at wasn't really that good of a place to settle. To found and support a civilization, you need to have a great river, and most of the Arabian Peninsula was devoid of such great rivers. That's the reason why human civilization first began between and around the rivers of Tigris and what is now Iraq.
This time, the Homo sapiens managed to successfully conquer the Middle East. But now, the question remains, which way will they expand now? There were three options: to the north to the Caucasus areas, to the west to Europe, or to the east to Asia. So the descendants of those two who survived decided to split up into four groups. One group stayed, while the others explored and settled.
Came through what is now Turkey in probably 40,000 BC. There they split themselves into several groups. These groups will later form into primary civilizations of Europe. Fast forwarding to 5000 BC, the first Germanic settlers came to Norway. They weren't the first to arrive there because the ancestor of the Sami people arrived in the area between 11,000 and 8,000 BC. The Germanic settlers settled along the coastline due to it being warmer there. This is mainly due to the Gulf Stream. There were a lot of measures and mixes of the genes between the Scandinavian people. This makes it easy to identify the bloodline of me, Willa. I obviously have some Swedish traits in addition to my obviously Norwegian ones. This makes me almost a direct to Germanic people.
My father / Nora's father is Iraqi and my mother is Romanian. My father's ancestors is more likely the area, and he is therefore most likely a direct descendant of the first settlers outside of Africa. My mother is harder to identify. The people who lived in the area were called the Dacians. They were a subgroup of the Thracians, who were a semi-Slavic people. But my mother has also got traits of the Latins. The Latins were the people who lived in what is now Italy. When the Roman Empire took over most of Europe, they threw out the other Latin tribes of Italy. These refugees would have settled in Dacia, and some of them even mixed with the local population.
As it progressed further east. The area was heavily inhabited by humanoid species of Homo erectus, but they were soon made extinct by the humans. The European counterparts, the Neanderthals, faced a similar fate. Homo sapiens were now the rulers of the earth.
Those who went east were separated into three groups. The first group split off and settled down in the Indian Peninsula. The area supported many rivers, and the climate was good. The second group went north, became the ancestors of East Russians, Far Eastern nations, Japan, China, etc., and ever indigenous people of the Americas. This was due to the land bridge between Siberia and Alaska that existed during the last ice age. After the ice age ended, the land bridge all Americas were isolated from the rest of the world.
The last group went southeast and will arrive in Australia about 50,000 BC. Although those who settled in Australia managed to survive, most of those in Southeast Asia did not. Most of those who are native to Southeast Asian countries are a migration wave that happened in 5000 BC.
It's a bit unclear whether the ancestors of the Madrid people were part of the first or the next waves. One thing that is for sure was that they did spread out from their island and managed to settle down in the entire Indonesian archipelago. Arab merchants have been trading with Southeast Asian nations even around the time of Jesus. Most of them came from Yemen, which was a really prosperous trading nation back then. Many of the merchants decided to settle down in several Asian countries, and the kingdoms of the now Indonesian archipelago were only some of those countries. So Wafa's grandfather, or my grandfather, and his family were descendants of Arab merchants. They must have come after or during the 7th century due to the entire family tree being Muslims. The Arab gene is clearly shown in Wafa's nose, among other traits. But the Madrid part